Hello guys and welcome back. So last time you will have seen me break my crystal press trying to get the crystal back into this case. Now I thought at the time that I got it in the right way and everything was fine, but in fact it didn't seat properly, so it was protruding too far out of the case. Since then I've done a few other things actually, which I'm going to share with you now and update you, and then I'm going to try and complete this build as it is currently, bar a few small differences which I'll talk about as we go. So once I got to this stage last time, I actually tried to install the bezel. If you remember, I think the watch movement and the case back and everything like that was already in. Now that was a bit of a mistake in that I found that no matter how careful I was, the chapter ring would still move around a little bit as I put the movement up against it and the face of the watch or the dial of the watch up against it. So actually I wouldn't recommend keeping the movement in while you press in the crystal. You're better off just lining it up and then testing it, lining it up again, and just taking the movement in and out as you go. And a bit of trial and error there worked for me in the end. I then realized, of course, that the crystal was too far out, and the reason I realized that was because I put on this nice coin edge bezel which I've got from Yobokies, and I ordered this alongside this insert. Now there's a reason I'm not going to pick it up, and that is because I'd installed the bezel the bezel itself. That was all fine. I had the click spring in, everything's great. It seemed to rotate beautifully, perfect. Then I put this insert on, and I found that it didn't quite, it was protruding a little bit from the top of the insert. If I take the stock insert here and place it in, it clips in a little bit I've not got any tape on this yet. It clips in, but you can see it's really nice and flat up against the edge. The new insert, this one, wasn't doing that, so I pushed on it quite hard using one of these dies actually, and it broke. So this is a ceramic insert. I'll show you a piece of it here if I can pick it up with these gloves on. Sorry, 1 minute, there we go. So this was supposed to be a ceramic loomed countdown bezel, which I was really keen to get on this watch, but unfortunately, perhaps being a bit heavy-handed, it broke. Now the reason it broke was not that it didn't fit in here, it fitted just like the stock one. In fact, they're identical in size apart from their height. The reason was that because I hadn't seated my crystal in properly, the insert would actually fault against the edge, the beveled edge, even though there is a beveled edge and there is technically enough room for it. Because the crystal was just slightly too high up, it popped as I pressed on it, and it broke, of course. So that's a real shame, because this actually cost quite a lot to get over here because I had to pay for FedEx shipping and so on, so it was annoying. In breaking it, I also actually got it stuck in here for some time, so it took a while for me to get this out, and then I polished up any scratches I had made on the edge, and I think I've done a pretty good job there. So I managed to save the coin edge bezel at least, but not the insert, of course. So I will consider reordering this, but maybe at a later time when the shipping's a bit cheaper, because right now it's very expensive to import this, unfortunately. I think I paid around $47 just for shipping of these two parts. Anyway, so we'll move that one aside. So how do I get the crystal in properly this time? Now I don't have a press anymore. I have actually reordered that because I think I thought I was correct in what I was doing. I think I just put too much pressure on it. So what I found was, in order to put the crystal in properly, you can actually hit it down. So what I did was I got this beer mat upside down. It's got quite a rough non-slip surface on this side, and I've put one of the dies on top of the crystal exactly like I'd use in the press, and I literally used a hammer I have at home, and I just hit it gently around the edges until it would seat properly. And I found actually using this method is far easier than using the press anyway. To get the crystal out, all I did was put two dies, something like this, flip the watch backwards, support the watch on the two dies, so it's just on the case itself. I'm going to be holding it as well anyway. And then I'll put a smaller die in the middle and simply tap this with the hammer and it will pop straight out. I found this way easier to use than the crystal press. Of course, it's much better to do this without the movement inside, because you are potentially getting some shock waves through the watch when you're tapping it, but then again the press does that as well when it clips into place quite quickly. So what's next then? As I said, I'm going to try and actually complete this build anyway. In messing around, I did actually damage the crystal very slightly. I don't know if you can see on the edge there, on where about my finger is, there is a tiny little nick in it now. That was actually from me trying to pry out the old bezel, and I scratched it along there. It wasn't from me hitting it with a hammer or anything. That actually was surprisingly fine. It was just the scratching it as I was trying to use a spring bar tool or something to get rid of the old bezel insert, which was broken. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I've got the crystal in properly. Oh, I should mention as well, some of you may have spotted I've actually polished these lugs as well. So as I was messing around with it, I found a few little scratches around the case. So I went to town with some Cape Cod polishing cloths, and I actually managed to polish out virtually everything on here, including the existing finishing which was on there, and I'm quite happy with this, how this has turned out. This has been an unexpected mod that I've done, but it's looking really neat actually, and I think it adds a bit of adds something to the watch, definitely. Now I would recommend doing this. I would probably use a machine such as a Dremel or something with a polishing tip to do it properly. There is, if you look really closely, there are some little bits of evidence of the original finishing in there. So I have ordered a little polishing machine, so I'll be polishing this case up properly once that arrives. So at this stage, I'm actually gonna install the new coin edge bezel. So this is what it looks like. It came with a little gasket, so I've already carefully popped that in there. Sometimes they'll come with them already in, mine didn't. It is quite a challenge to get this in, but yes, just a bit of patience, as with most of these things actually, a bit of patience prevails there. The bezel itself is really nice. It's really nicely made, nice and bright, and again I did polish this up again with the Cape Cod just before I put it in. So another little mod that I wasn't expecting to do was actually to adjust the click spring. So here we have a standard click spring, and as you can see, it's got the two little parts that stick up, and essentially what happens is you would place this click spring onto your onto the watch case just below the bezel. There's two holes here and here that support it, and as the bezel rotates, let's see if I can zoom in again, you can see that little clip sticking up, that little spring sticking up, and underneath the bezel there are these row of kind of dugouts almost. So as it goes round, it ratchets and it clicks along with these two. Now because there's two of them, they are synced to work in opposite sides at a time, so you get 120 clicks. So as you turn it, you click this one first, then this one, then this one, then this one, then this one, and you get your 120 click sound. Now I actually much prefer a 60 click bezel, so what I did is with this one, we'll see if you can see it, there's one spring that's still there, and on the other side I've actually just flattened the part that used to be the spring, and what that's done is it's actually made it 60 click instead, so all of those little teeth are just clicking away up here instead. Let's drop that in like so, and I'm actually going to make it so the the click spring, the bit where the noise comes from, is at the top. Now, I think I had it the other way before, but let's see what happens. I think it'll be fine. So now we get the bezel and we place it on the top, and actually you can sort of feel it wanting to go on anyway. But here I'm going to use my new method of attaching or removing things like this, and that is with a die. Now, fortunately, in this case, in this set that I got, this die, it is a 38, I believe, die, and it works perfectly. It fits in place of the bezel insert. So it's exactly right on the edge, exactly where you want it. And I'm going to try and just tap it with the hammer. Let's see if that's done it. Not quite. There we go. So now we have a rotating bezel that is also 60 click. And it feels quite nice because you can actually feel the ratcheting happening just at the top. Usually it would also happen on the bottom on alternate sides. There might be a way of actually modifying it so both springs still work to give you a bit more resistance and less back play, but I think that is a welcome addition anyway. I much prefer a 60 click bezel myself. So the bezel's on now, so let's go ahead and clean up the case a bit. I'm going to get rid of all the fingerprint marks and stuff in here, get rid of all the dust, and get ready to reinsert the movement. Okay, so I'm back now. I've cleaned out the inside of the case. So I'm going to hold the watch this way around, which is upside down actually, and I'm going to line up and get the movement back in. Now I found that this is easily done by actually holding the movement upside down like so, because the watch case is also upside down. The reason I have this upside down is because then the crown is over on this side, on my right side. I'm going to just give it a bit of a blow with the blower in case it's picked up any dust on the top side. I don't think it has, it should be fine. Then I'm going to try and drop it in to the top here to get ready to align this part, which is where the crown's going to go, with the crown tube. Now, I was at first very worried about touching any of this, but actually, as long as you're careful not to touch any of the gears, you should be okay. Now, the rotor as well, I'm just adding a little bit of pressure to try and get it all lined up. And now, the finishing point is actually just popping in the crown. And it does kind of self-align. So once it's in, we can flip the watch back round and have a look at it and just test the function. So I can feel it winding there. I'm gonna go out all the way, we can set the time. I'm gonna go out just halfway and we can set the date. All good. Now, at this stage, we can also check to see if our chapter ring is lined up. Okay, so a small confession to make. I did actually go and adjust it. It took me about 2 or 3 tries of taking the movement out, wiggling the chapter ring, putting the movement back, putting the crown on. To be honest, it's very easy to get the movement and crown in and out, actually. So I think it's worth doing it. And now you can see it lines up a little bit better. It is tough to do though, and maybe not everyone else is bothered about it as I am, but I'm going to be putting this watch back together and wearing it for a little bit, so I do want to make sure everything's okay. So now we just need to screw on the case back at the back. That is this not sapphire. I think this is probably a hardlex crystal that they use for this exhibition case back as well. It's important at this stage to make sure it's very clean. So I'm just going to give it a final wipe down, and always look at it against some light, and actually to polish the top as well. It looks okay to me. I did complete putting the watch together before and found that there was a little speck of dust on the inside of the front crystal, and that really bothered me. Fortunately, it wasn't that difficult to again unscrew this and get rid of the dust. The other point to check is the rotor, or anywhere you've been touching. If you've been wearing gloves, it should be fine, like this is. But if you've just been doing it barehanded, you can get some fingerprints on there, which might look a little bit unsightly. So let's drop the case back on. I found this is a bit tricky to get the threads to line up first time. It takes a little bit of maybe there's a specific angle or point it wants to start going on. See, that's not right. It's been on very easily. I think I've got it finally. Yeah, just takes a little messing around, but I've got it. Maybe there was a bit of dust or something in the way, but it should be all right now. So just give it quite a tight push. I'm not going to go crazy hard because, again, I will be modifying this further probably, because I do want to polish the case more, polish the bezel more, and so on. So here we go. This is pretty much what the watch is going to look like. It looks kind of cool without any bezel insert, actually. So I might even see what it looks like with the strap but no bezel. And then I will show you what we're going to do with the bezel situation, considering that I have broken my previous one. So I think that looks quite cool. It's worth mentioning now, compared to the Hardlex crystal that came with the double dome, this will look better with the bezel in actually, but it has quite a protruding dome at the top, but not as high as I thought it would be actually. And it doesn't really distort the dial, but you get some really nice views of the watch dial, and I think this dial is really quite special. I love the blue sapphire, blue AR coating, should I say, playing with the light as well. I have noticed though straight away that this does reflect much more light than the Hardlex did. So even though this is anti-reflective coated, I think probably mostly because it's domed, it does definitely catch the light a lot more. But then again, I've also polished it all, so it's going to be quite a flashy watch when it's done. So here we go, guys. This is the watch back on the strap and actually looking like a watch again. From the beginning of this video, definitely looks quite different. I think what I've done with it so far really does aid in its appearance. Of course, we're lacking a bezel insert, but I just thought, let's see what it looks like without a bezel insert, and actually looks kind of cool. So I know you can get flat bezels like this with no insert, like a pilot style watch or something. So that really nice bezel action. It is harder to grip this bezel than the previous one, because I'm wearing gloves. It's a little easier, rubber gloves at least, or silicone gloves, whatever they are. But yeah, I've found it a little harder to use generally. So what I'm going to do now is actually just drop in the original insert. Now, interestingly, given the sort of shape and general appearance of this insert, I think it's aluminium. That's what I've been led to believe just originally, that all these are aluminium, but I could be, I don't know. The way it feels and the fact that it is a little bit ductile makes me think that perhaps this is actually some sort of composite material that they've printed on. But anyway, how we would align this is I would click it, so there is a click there, and I'll just turn back as far as it will go, and then we want to drop in the bezel. Now obviously you would want to glue this in somehow, but I'm not going to do that for now because I may well change this bezel insert, but also I'm going to be polishing this polishing the bezel itself. So let's try and line it up within there, because it does sort of clip in a little bit, and it's actually kind of hard to get out even without any glue. So once it's in there, it is quite in there. So there we go, guys. That is my sort of half modified Seiko. A few extra modifications there I wasn't expecting to do, like the polished lugs, which I think actually looks really good, and the 60-click bezel mod, which is by far the easiest thing you can do, but I really like it. I much prefer a 60-click bezel to a 120-click. I think they're just nicer to use. Everything lines up. We've got this lovely sapphire playing with the light as well, and I think it's a nice start. So let me know what you think, guys. Give me some advice if you can. Let me know of any nice bezel inserts. If you've seen a countdown bezel, that is the bezel I want, preferably in black. But yeah, give me some advice if you can, if you've done something like this before. Like and subscribe and follow me on my journey. I almost forgot to give you a wrist shot of the newly modified Seiko here, and I think that bezel does a tremendous job of reducing that overall height, that sort of awkward bezel shape. I think it lines up or matches up more neatly to the crown as well, and I actually like the new polished look I've given to the lugs. Let me know what you think, guys. I think this is a solid improvement for not much money.